Good day, class. Welcome to week 3 for professional practice subject in architecture. This week, we're going to discuss about PD 957, the revised rules and regulations implementing the subdivision buyer's protective degree and other related laws. Pursuant to Article 4, Section 5 of Executive Order Number 648, the following rules are hereby promulgated by the Housing and Land Use Board to implement Presidential Decrees Numbers 957, 1216, 1344, and other related laws applicable to open market and medium-cost subdivision and condominium projects. First, we're going to start with Rule 1, or the minimum design standards. Section 1, Design Standards for Subdivisions. Residential subdivision projects shall conform with the minimum design standards, applicable local government unit zoning ordinances, as well as pertinent provisions of the National Building Code, if the project is with housing component. First, the site criteria. Location. Conformity with zoning ordinance comprehensive land use plan. Subdivision projects shall be located in residential zones or other areas appropriated for residential uses. If there is no zoning ordinance or approved comprehensive land use plan, the dominant land use principle and site suitability factors cited herein shall be used in determining suitability of a project. Subdivision projects supportive of other major urban activities, for example, housing for industrial workers, may be allowed in areas zoned for the said urban activities. Number 2, physical suitability. Subdivision projects shall be located within suitable sites for housing and outside hazard-prone areas and protection areas as provided by pertinent laws. Critical areas subject to flooding, landslides, and those with unstable soil must be avoided. The site shall be stable enough to accommodate foundation load without excessive earth moving, grading, or cutting and filling. Number 3, accessibility. The site must be served by a road that is readily accessible to public transportation lines. Said access road shall conform with the standards set herein to accommodate expected demand caused by the development of the area. In no case shall a subdivision be a project be approved without the necessary access or road right of way. Said access road right of way may be constructed either by the developer or the local government unit. So for the site criteria class, first is going to check the location. So the location must conform with the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive land use plan. This is usually done by the local government unit. So when you plan a city, there are areas which are zoned for residential, industrial, agricultural. So you make sure that the location of your subdivision will be in a residential zone area. Number 2, physical suitability. So subdivision projects should be located within suitable sites which are outside hazard-prone areas. For example, areas which are subject to flooding, landslides, and those with unstable soil. So this calls for the collaboration with geotechnical engineers. So geotechnical engineers will make sure that the site that is selected is suitable for the project. Next is accessibility. You must make sure that your subdivision has an access road, which will be either be developed by the developer or the local government unit. Okay, so these are the different site criteria. Next, the planning considerations. 1. Area planning. Planning and designing of subdivision projects shall take into account the following. First, the safety and general welfare of future occupants. Okay? So when you design and plan subdivisions, you should not only think about the present. You should also plan for the future as well. That's why it's called planning. Uh, like the saying, planning to fail is like, failing to plan is like planning to fail. Diba? It's like that. Okay. Then B, adequate, safe, efficient, and integrative road circulation system serving every lot they're in. So when you design subdivisions, there should be a road circulation system which services all the lots inside. So there should be no lot without a road circulation system. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the owners of the said properties to get into their homes. 2. Judicious allocation of land uses for diversity and amenity. Okay? So when you design subdivisions, class, you're not only design for the residential areas, but should also design the amenities. For example, amenities, you have the clubhouse, you have the guard, you have the generator areas, you have the recreation areas and facilities, and the parks, and also the parks. 2. Preservation of site. As much as possible, when you construct subdivisions, you must not disturb the local flora and fauna which is already existing. You must not disturb the ecosystem. Otherwise, when you do that, you are creating problems which will take effect in the future. Letter E, proper siting or orientation of lots. So when you design the lots, you must make sure that they are located and they're properly oriented. I think in your design studies, you already thought about where where to locate the doors, the windows, and where how you can get maximum orientation to gather the most wind and air circulation, and also to avoid excessive sunlight. Letter F, harmony with existing and proposed development in the vicinity. So your subdivision have should also be harmonious with the uh, existing developments which surround it. Does not necessarily mean that you follow the design concept, but it must not be something that is too elaborate, that is too excessive in design. G. Application of workable design principles or parameters for a well-planned and self-sustaining environment. So, as architects, it is our job to integrate mm, parameters for self-sustaining systems. For example, the integration of solar systems, the integration of drip irrigation systems in our houses. And right now, with the effect of the pandemic, we must design communities which are at least resilient to pandemics. When a developer or planner submits a planning unit development or PUD type of project, the layout shall likewise conform to the standards for residential condominium projects. For open spaces shall conform to the provisions of PD 1216 and its implementing rules and shall include the following. Number 1. Streets. Adequate and safe means of vehicular and pedestrian circulation and easements for utilities and planting strips shall be provided. So when you design your subdivision, there should be circulation system for vehicles, the pedestrians. There should be easements for utilities and planting strips. 2. Walks. Paved walks shall be provided to the living units from streets, parking spaces, and from living units to play areas. Number 3. Parks and playground. Suitable recreational areas shall be allocated within the subdivision. Where applicable, a hierarchy of such recreational areas may be provided for, such that a strategically located main park area is supplemented or complemented by one or more smaller pocket areas for recreational use. These areas must be accessible to living units and free from any form of hazard or risk. Said parks and playgrounds shall be cleared and free from any debris. Parks and playgrounds, as much as possible, shall be at street level. Facilities and amenities. Areas required for subdivision facilities and amenities shall be judiciously allocated in accordance with the provisions herein specified. Density. The density of subdivision projects shall conform with the residential densities set forth in the zoning ordinance of the city or municipality where the project is located, where there is a mixture of housing types within the subdivision, such as single detached. So when you say single detached class, it has no firewall, so it has setbacks all around it. Next is a row house. Next are townhouses, etc. Density shall include the number of dwelling units in multi-story structure, plus the total number of lots intended for single and semi-detached houses. 2. Site preservation. So these are the parameters for site preservation. 1. Slope. The finished grade shall have a desired slope to allow rainwater to be channeled into street drains. Where cut and fill is necessary, an appropriate grade shall be attained to prevent any depression in the area. Grading and ditching shall be executed in a manner that will prevent erosion or flooding of adjoining properties. Okay, so when you design your subdivision, you must also make sure that the proposed slope does not create water basins during heavy rains. Okay, you must make sure that there are enough mm, channels for rainwater to travel into the main sewer line of the city or the main storm sewer line of the city. B. Preservation of site assets. Suitable trees with a caliper of 200 millimeters or more, shrubs, and desirable ground cover per Department of Natural Resources DNR rules shall be observed. Where a good quality topsoil exists in a site, it shall be banked and shall be preserved for finishing grades of yards, playgrounds, parks, and garden areas. Now this B class is usually the one being omitted by most developers. When you design subdivisions, you must first locate the existing trees in the vicinity and make sure you're going to catalog them as to the type. For example, when there are Nara trees in your development, if there are Nara trees, you must gain a permit from the DNR before they can be cut down. The best thing to do if you have these trees in your vicinity is to incorporate them into the design of your subdivision. That's why they're called site assets because they can be created into vistas. Then, as architects, it's our role to make sure that they're fully utilized. So, you must not disturb the nature, the existing natural conditions as much as possible when designing communities. C. Ground cover. Grass, shrubs, plants, and other landscaping materials for ground cover shall be of a variety appropriate for its intended use and location. It shall be planted so as to allow well-tended cover of the area. Easements. Subdivision projects shall observe and conform to the following provisions on easements, as may be required by. Please take note of this class and do your research. A. Chapter 4, Section 51 of the Water Code on Water Bodies. B. National Power Corporation on Transmission Lines. C. PVOX per Resolution Number 515, Series of 1992 on Identified Fault Traces. D. Other public utility companies and other entities right of way. E. National local government units for projects abutting national roads, primary roads, where adequate easement shall be provided for, including loading and unloading areas. F. Other related laws. Number 4, circulation. Depending on the classification of roads adjacent to the subdivision and the size of the project site, road network should result in a hierarchy of functions and should define and serve the subdivision as one integral unit. A. Roads complemented with pathwalks within the subdivision must be so aligned to facilitate movement and to link the subdivision to the nearest major transportation route and/or adjacent property. Whenever there are existing roads within the project site which shall be made part of the subdivision plan, there shall be these shall be improved in accordance with the standards set forth therein. B. Streets should conform to the contours of the land as far as practicable. So why is it like this? This is to save on cost. Because as long as you follow the contour of the land, you will have a lesser development cost also on the side of the owner. Where a proposed project adjoins a developed property, roads within the said property shall be connected, integrated, aligned with existing ones. Where a proposed property adjoins an undeveloped property, a provision for future connection shall be mandatory. Okay? If there's already existing one, the roads of the project should be integrated with existing. However, if the proposed project adjoins an undeveloped property, there should always be a provision for future connection. C. As far as practicable, streets shall be laid out at right angles to minimize critical intersections such as blind corners, skew junctions, etc. So this is important, class, especially in managing vehicular accidents. So if you already have your own vehicles, you can notice that it is hard sometimes mm, to travel in in angles which has blind corners because you will not see the car or vehicle coming from that direction. D. Road shall conform to sound engineering practices. Subdivision projects shall comply to the pertinent requirements of Batas Pambansa 344 or BP 344, otherwise known as the Accessibility Law, which will be discussed later on in this course. So, 5. Installation of street names. The developer shall bear the cost of installation of street name signs coincident with the construction of streets. So, this is important, class, that the streets should have names so that it will be possible to locate each individual homes. As for the design parameters, we're going to touch briefly in, into the important and salient points. Our next lesson next week, which is BP 220, will have a comparative analysis on the difference between the two laws. Okay? What is important to note here is the difference, the percentage of the sellable and non-sellable areas. From the total subdivision, the subdivision area, class, 70% of the gross area is the saleable portion, but the non-saleable area is 30%. It's important to note, class, that you should always allocate parks and playgrounds, but should not be less than 100 square meters. Now, per hectare, if there are 20 units and below, 3.5% of the gross area should be allocated for it. For 21 to 25 dwelling units per hectare, 4%, 26 to 35 at 5, 36 above to 6, 51 to 65 at 7%, and 65 above at 9%. Parks and playgrounds class are important because you should not only concentrate on sellable areas alone. It would be easier to market high-end subdivision who have more open spaces, and which gives a more natural vibe and feel than ones which are designed with lesser parks and recreational facilities. Community facilities. So mandatory provision of areas for community facilities such as neighborhood multi-purpose center for both open market, medium cost housing projects, 1 hectare and above, these areas are non-sellable. However, the developer may provide additional areas for community facilities, schools, commercial centers, excess of the mandatory requirements set forth in this rule, which shall be deemed sellable. The use of the set areas shall be indicated in the plan and shall be annotated in the title thereto. Okay. So, community facilities, a common example for this are your clubhouse, swimming pools, and basketball courts located in your village or subdivision. And now, class, we're going to jump into the requirements. The design criteria, you'll have an activity for it so that it will be easier to understand and memorize them for future reference and for your board exam when you graduate. Okay, so let's move into the requirements. For the approval of your subdivision plans, Section 5, application for approval of subdivision development plan. Every registered owner or developer of a parcel of land who wishes to convert the same into a subdivision project shall apply with the board or the local government unit (LGU) concerned for the approval of the subdivision and development plan by filing the following. So A, for optional application for a preliminary subdivision development plan. For the optional application for the preliminary subdivision development plan, you need at least 2 sets of site development plan and schematics at a scale ranging from 1:200 to 1:1000, showing the proposed layout of streets, lots, parks, and playgrounds and other features in relation to existing conditions. The area prepared, signed, and sealed by a licensed and registered architect, environmental planner, civil engineer, or geodetic engineer. This is amended per Board Resolution number 794 series of 2006. 1 set of the following documents shall be signed and sealed by licensed geodetic engineer. First, A is the vicinity map. So the vicinity map indicates the adjoining land uses, access, as well as existing facilities and utilities within 500 meters from the property boundaries of the project, drawn to any convenient scale. Then you also have the topographic plan to include 1. The boundary lines, bearings, distances, type point or reference point, geometric coordinates of the point, tie, or Bureau of Lands Locational Monument (BLLM), street easements with the elevation of road right of way within the project and adjacent subdivision areas, utilities within and adjacent to the proposed subdivision project, location, sizes, and elevations of sanitary and storm or combined sewers, location of gas lines, fire hydrants, electric and telephone poles, and street lights, if any. If water mains and sewers are not within or adjacent to the subdivision, indicate the direction and distance to the size of the nearest one, showing invert elevations of sewers if applicable. Ground elevation of the subdivision, water courses, marsh, rock, and wooded areas, presence of preservable trees in caliper, including 200 millimeters houses, barns, shacks, and other significant features. 6. Propose public improvements, highways or other improvements planned by the public authorities for future construction within the adjacent subdivision. And survey plan of the individual lots as described in the TCPs. 3. At least 2 copies of the certified true copy of title and the current tax receipt. 4. Right to use or deed of sale of right of way for access road and other utilities when applicable, subject to just compensation for private land. Approval of the preliminary subdivision development plan will be valid only for a period of 180 days from the date of approval. So it has an expiry period of 180 days. We're going to submit a preliminary subdivision plan. Next is the application for subdivision development permit. So all requirements for the preliminary subdivision plan as specified. So those early requirements. Then you're going to create a subdivision development plan consisting of the site development plan at any of the following scales. You have 1:100, 1:1,000, or any scale not exceeding 1:2,000. Showing all proposals, including the following. A, you have the roads, lot numbers, site data, such as number of residential saleable lots, typical lot size, parks and playgrounds, and open spaces. So then again, the subdivision development plan shall be prepared, signed, and sealed by any licensed and registered architect, environmental planner, civil engineer, or geodetic engineer. Next is your civil and sanitary works design. So this is something you must collaborate with your allied professionals, the civil engineers. So engineering plans, construction drawing based on applicable engineering code and design criteria. You need at least 2 copies of geometric and structural design, geodet design, prepared in science by licensed civil engineer. Profile derived from existing topographic map showing the vertical control, design grade, curved elements, and all information needed for construction. Typical roadway sections, relative dimension of pavement, and base preparation, curves and gutters, sidewalk, shoulders, benching, and others. Details of miscellaneous structures such as curb and gutter, slope protection, riprapping, and retaining wall. These are prepared by our allied professionals, the civil engineers. Next is at least 2 copies of storm drainage and sanitary sewer system duly signed and sealed by licensed sanitary engineer or civil engineer. So it shows the profile showing the hydraulic regions and the details of sanitary and storm drainage lines. C. At least 2 copies of site grading plan with a finished contour line superimposed on the existing ground, the limits of earthwork, embankment, slopes, cut slopes, drainage, outfalls, and others duly signed and sealed by a licensed civil engineer. At least 2 copies of a water system layout and details duly signed and sealed by a licensed sanitary civil engineer. Should a pump motor have a horsepower of 50 or more, its pump rating and specifications shall be designed and sealed by a professional mechanical engineer. Then, certified true copy of that tax declaration, certified true copy of your environmental compliance certificate or certificate of non-coverage issued by the DNR. Zoning certificate from HLURB regional office stating that the area to be developed into a subdivision is suitable for residential purposes. Number 8. Certified true copy of dark conversion order. Because there are a lot of subdivisions developed in our country which began as agricultural in use. At least 2 copies of project description for projects having an area of 1 hectare and above, which includes the following: project profile indicating the cost of raw land and its development, amortization schedule, sources of financing, cash flow, architectural plan if any, and work program, audited financial statement, income tax return, certificate of registration, articles of incorporation, corporation bylaws, for new corporation, statement of capitalization, and sources of income and cash flow to support work program. Plans and specifications, bill of materials, and cost estimates duly signed and sealed by the appropriate licensed professionals. Number 11, application for permit to drill the National Water Resources Board, traffic impact assessment for subdivision projects 30 hectares and more. Copy of the special temporary permit from the PRC and other separate permit from the DOLE for foreign architects who signed on plans. List of names of fully licensed professionals who signed the plans and other similar documents in connection with the application file indicating the following information. You have the surname, first name, middle name, maiden name, PRC number, PTR, date of issue, then the TIN. If the establishment of the subdivision project is physically feasible and does not run counter to the approved zoning and land use of the city or municipality and the subdivision plan complies with these rules, the same shall be approved and a development permit shall be issued upon payment of the prescribed processing fee. A development permit shall be valid for only 3 years from the date of issuance, so take note of these last 3 years. If the project has been issued a development permit, a locational clearance is deemed incorporated therein. So the owner or developer shall cause the necessary surveys of the project and prepare the survey returns with a technical description and computations duly signed and sealed by licensed genetic engineer to be submitted together in accordance with the approved subdivision plan to the land management sector for verification and approval. Okay. Then you also have rule 3 for the approval of condominium plans. So uh, when you say condominium class, what are the first things that comes in your mind? So you should ask yourself that question and try to research furthermore on the topic. Section 6, application for approval of condominium plan. So you need at least 2 sets of condominium plan at any of the following scales. 1:200, 400, or any scale not exceeding 1:400. Notice that the scale is smaller compared to the requirements for the subdivision plan, because when you say residential condominium, you're basically talking of a single building or structure or a series of buildings or structures. You can find a lot of examples of that in the city of Cagayan de Oro. No? And please take note that it should be signed and sealed by a licensed architect. Site development plan to include parking and parks and playground layout if applicable. Then you have the floor plans, the sections, and elevations. At least 2 copies of the vicinity map within 500 meters, building specifications and estimated cost, zoning certificate, that is for residential by from the HLURB, then certified 2 copy of dark conversion order if it was agricultural area, ECC, and CNC issued by the DNR, whichever is applicable, certified 2 copy, right to use or deed of sale, one copy of project study to include the following: project profile, audited financial statements, income tax return, certificate of registration, articles of incorporation, corporation bylaws, etc. Basically, it has very similar format when you're applying for subdivision. It applies also in condominiums. Permit to drill and copy of special permits if it's a foreign architect who designed. A list of names of the professionals who are involved in the project. Okay, so these are the salient points of PD 957 class. For this week, for your suggested reading, your assignment is to convert into tabular format the different design criterias or design parameters in condominium and subdivision design. Okay, this is important. This is important, and I want you to have to experience in writing the data in tabular forms that you'll be familiar with it. And you can also use the data for your future practice or for your reference during the board exam. Like that. So I want to spoon feed all the information to you. I'm here to lead you to the fountain of knowledge regarding subdivision planning and design and also the building laws. But it is up to you whether to drink from it or not. But as I suggest for you to uh, study the design parameters well because these will be included in your exam. Okay? So your assignment for this week, again, I repeat, is to convert the design parameters of PG957 into uh, tabular or graphical format, whichever is much more convenient to you. Okay? So the deadline for submission is on week 4, anytime during the week 4, because you're going to have a different assignment once we discuss and introduce BP to 20 next meeting. Okay? If you have any further questions, class, please don't hesitate to comment or uh, give me an email or a PM. I will respond as soon as possible and the fastest possible time. Okay, so good luck and I wish you success in your future endeavors. Uh, please don't forget to study, and though building laws might be initially boring to you, but these are very important uh, data, very important information if you want to become architects in the future. Okay, so thank you and good luck. See you on week 4.